including us.
Oh,
Levi, you are muted as well. Hey, thank you guys all for coming today to releasing creativity in your church and life. We're going to get started here right away. We're told about 80 or so people joining the call. So we just want to give people a few minutes to log on from all across Canada and all across the world. We are coming at you guys from Edmonton, Alberta.
come on.
The city of champions.
That's right.
As they say, Connor McDavid.
Going all the way to the cup.
100 points in 53 games.
I mean, I haven't seen Austin Matthew do something like that.
That's true. And for all of our brothers and sisters in Ontario, 40 goals is 40 goals, but it's not 100 points.
It's not 100 points.
And so, anyway, we're just going to keep letting some people into the room here, and then we're going to get started, and we're going to talk about creativity in your life, in your church. Like I said, we're coming at you from Edmonton, Alberta. People from all across Canada joining the call. The conference so far has been amazing. I was here. We actually filmed a bunch of the sessions yesterday.
Yeah.
And so now I've got to hear a couple of these messages twice. And man, they've just been good, setting some good direction for our nation. As we all, we're all in this together, leading the church and doing things. And so welcome everyone for joining. I think we're at 27, 28 people. We're going to get started here, and we're going to try and catch up a little bit and closer to the time that we set. So before we get any further into this, we're going to do some introductions. Like I said, we're coming at you from Edmonton, Alberta, and we actually were supposed to have a third host with us, but he is on isolation protocol. So we're going to actually throw over, because he's on the Zoom call, and he's going to introduce himself, and then Seb, and then I will introduce myself.
Hey everyone, my name is Levi. I'm kind of in charge of the video, photo, social media stuff for Saints Church. And I also do wedding videography and photography on the side with my wife. And yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
Levi, what's your order at Starbucks?
Oh, vanilla cream cold brew.
Come on.
Yeah,
that cloud foam?
Very basic. Oh, of course, you have to have the cloud foam on there.
Come on.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, my name's Seb, or Sebastian, or as a lot of people like to call me by accident, Seth. It's great to see all of you guys. I also work at Saints Church, formerly known as Engage/WECA/Scattered Saints. So we've been doing a lot of rebranding in the last year, but I take care of the worship and production teams at our two locations, and just kind of whatever other holes need to be filled as they come up. So thanks for joining us and having me today.
Yeah, I mean, Seb, you are you do everything. You are the epitome of creativity, because it's just like, I'm just going to make up a new job for myself and find a new thing to do. So,
well, when you run out of things to do, if you still want to have a job,
that's true.
You know,
it's job security.
There's only so many cables you can cut before people start catching on that you're just trying to keep job security. Yes. So,
and my name is Stephen Schwartz, and I actually was a creative pastor at my local church, which is Home Church in Red Deer, Alberta. It's a multi-site church here in Alberta. And actually, just as of September of last year, still at my church, still serving in a volunteer staff capacity, but went on to start a creative agency that serves local churches and helps build creative teams all across Canada. And I've been privileged to work with Seb, Levi, Pastor Brett, the team here at Saints, and actually did all of the, I'm just gonna tell you guys
Just-
all about
just
how awesome
plug
I am.
away, you know.
But did all the design and branding and graphics for the Ministers Network Canada, all that orange stuff that we've all seen so much orange for the last day.
Yep.
That's my fault. And so if that's not, if you're frustrated with that, my apologies. And you can email me at seb.merta@engagedchurch.ca.
Exactly.
So, okay, we're going to talk about, and by the way, at the end of this, at the end of our presentation, we're going to take some time for questions. And so if you do have questions based on what we're talking about or the topic in general, if you want to drop those in the chat, you're free to, or maybe you can raise your hand on Zoom and we can chat face to face towards the end. We'd love to field any questions that you may have. But as we get started, we're going to talk about really what creativity is. And, that's such a ambiguous, broad topic as to what creativity is. But we're going to define it in a few ways. And then we got a little bit of a back and forth to go towards the end. So creativity, Seb, we want to talk about in the church context, in the ministry context, creativity isn't just cameras, video, design. It's not just worship. How do you define creativity in the church world?
Yeah. So when me and Levi started working together about a year ago, when COVID kind of started, Levi would always say, I want to just go do creative things. And we would be in the middle of like setting up a stage or like, doing something in the auditorium, running cables, doing all sorts of things, building racks. And I kept on saying to Levi, I said, Levi, this is creative. This is a creative thing to do. It's not just going and designing and doing graphic design or social media posts. It's anything that you put your hand to and you try and solve a problem. Creativity is really solving a problem that your church has, that your family has, that you have, and being able to find a solution. And I think for me, I was, as I mentioned, I was with Engage, which is now Saints Church, and we were a church plant. So we started when I started there, we were about 25, 30 people. And Pastor Brett always had these big goals and visions to have, just do big production stuff or do big events. And we had no budget, we had no people, we had not much. But what we did have is we had creativity. And so we would try and come up with solutions to be able to figure out those problems and be able to do and really do the vision that he was laying on our church. So for me, that's what creativity is. It's not just doing necessarily the fun things or the things that are your niche things, but it's actually just solving the problems to be able to serve your church and to serve your communities.
Levi, do you want to defend yourself at all, or are you just gonna let Seb?
I think he covered most of the bases. I definitely had an eye opener when I first started working at the church last year on creativity. So I think he kind of hit the nail on the head with it.
Yeah, I think it is so important that we as church leaders, we don't just say, well, hey, we're going to leave that to the creative guys and I'm an admin person and I'm just going to stay in my zone and I like things linear, or maybe you're in an accounting department or something like that and you're like, I just like the numbers. Well, creativity is actually given to us by the creator. Like the Holy Spirit is led by the Holy Spirit and is given to us for all areas of ministry. It is not just reserved with the guys with long hair and beards.
That's true.
And or just the worship team, or just the pastor as he's coming up with his analogies and his metaphors. It's actually something, it's a posture that we need to approach all of ministry life with.
Yeah.
Right. And I've used this analogy so many times that I feel like I'm beating it to death, but I just think it's so appropriate. And there's actually, I listened to it in a book called Profit First by Mike Michalowicz, and he has this idea of, when you have a full tube of toothpaste, you're really liberal with the toothpaste. You're like, you don't care if you accidentally drop some toothpaste off your brush, goes down the sink. You don't care about that. But then when you get to the end of the tube,
Oh boy.
that's when it's like you start setting up like an intricate pulley system in your bathroom.
Pneumatic press.
And you're like laying things out. You're rolling up the toothpaste real tight. You're finding whatever way possible to get the toothpaste out of the tube.
Yeah.
And that really is, when we're talking about creativity in all of these different areas, a lot of the pushback I get when I'm talking to different pastors and church leaders and whatever is like, well, I don't have the resource. I don't have the staff.
Yeah.
I don't have the budget. I don't have the people. I don't. And it's like, well, creativity doesn't say I don't have these things. Creativity approaches it like the bottom of the toothpaste, where it's like you squeeze out absolutely every ounce of potential that you have and make that thing go as far as you can. So Seb, you guys bootstrap for a long time as a church plant. Why don't you talk about a little bit about how you guys have really squeezed potential out when it comes to budget or resource or whatever?
Yeah. So, we had all sorts of crazy things kind of happen to us as a church. We started out, as I said, Pastor Brett started the church, and then I joined him about 6 months later, and we were about 40 people. And he had all sorts of things that he wanted to do and wanted to accomplish, but we didn't have any money to do it. And so we just started looking every different place that we could for budget or for, relationships is actually the first place that we started. So Pastor Brett actually got on the board in the city he was in, the town he was in, so he could build some of those relationships. And through that, we were actually able to partner together with a few different, different stages or theaters or companies in the town and be able to get good deals that were mutually beneficial for both of us. And so we kind of started that way, and then reaching out to different churches, and one thing led to another, and a church shut down. And when they were shutting down, they said, "Hey, do you want our church?" And we were like, "Yes, please." And so they gave us the keys to the church and all this stuff. And all this stuff wasn't the stuff that, wasn't the same kind of style of church that we wanted. It wasn't the exact same thing that we were looking for. And so, I ended up selling a whole bunch of stuff on Kijiji and just trading things and getting the things that we needed as a church to be able to reach the goals, the creative goals that we had. And so, and I think we've seen this more in the last year than ever before. Totally. Churches that you would have never thought of attempting to do a live stream were forced into the position where they had to do a live stream. Totally. And pastors who never ever wanted to touch technology are now probably unreal, at least compared to where they used to be at technology. And so I think we've all experienced this boom of creativity in the last year, because Pastor Brett actually always says that lack or not having enough is it gives fire to creativity, because it forces you to think outside of the box. And so as I said, we merged with this church. It was West Edmonton Christian Assembly about a year ago. And when we merged, once again, there was two completely different visions from the church before and what we are now. And so I didn't have any budget for any of the camera gear I wanted. I didn't have any budget for sound gear that I wanted. And so we just started looking in closets in the building, literally looking in closets in the building. And this building's massive, so there was a lot of closets. But, I spent so many days just selling gear, trading gear away, and just to be able to accomplish the goals that we were looking for. And sometimes I had to trade gear away for something that, it wasn't worth, I didn't get the value that I wanted out of it, but I got what I needed. And so because I was able to get what I needed, that accomplished my goal. And so, yeah, I really think that, creativity begins with innovation. You start 100%. building on the foundation that you have and working towards the goal that you're trying to get to. And maybe that's just chipping away a little bit at a time. Maybe that's, pulling a cable. The other day I was pulling old Cat 5 cable out of conduit, and that's free. The room that we're in right now, even, it looks cool. And we have a little sign that we got made that was not very expensive. And we got a table that we bought used from IKEA. and we just ripped up the carpet, and that's all there is, really. And so it's kind of cool what you can accomplish by actually just removing things,
Sure.
I think, and trying to just innovate on what you have in order to get to what the goal is that you're trying to accomplish.
Dude, that's so good. Creativity, if you are taking notes, creativity starts with innovation, and it is a posture that we approach things with. Instead of I can't, it's what could it be, what is the potential, and that kind of sets the stage for kind of the direction that we want to take for the rest of this breakout. Is that given this understanding of creativity, given this idea of creativity as a posture, it's innovation, it's the toothpaste at the bottom of the tube, we want to talk about as a team, Levi, Seb, myself, a few of the dichotomies that we see creative teams, pastors, churches face. And this isn't just, I've seen this once. It's like, this is some recurring themes that we have with different teams and mindsets. And so we have a few that we're going to go through. And again, if you have a question or a comment, would love to hear it in the chat. And we'll take your questions at the end and chat about it. But the first kind of dichotomy that we want to talk about is the it's good enough versus the it's not good enough mindset. Now, what does that mean? I would say in the church context that, well, I shouldn't say the one that I'm from, but in a lot of church contexts I've seen, there is a mindset of, well, it's good enough. This is where we're at. This is our budget. This is our resource. This is the amount of time that we have. And so it is what it is. It's good enough. It's good enough to get by. It's good enough. And that really is, good is the enemy of great. It really, when we start to hit that kind of mindset, it really dumbs down the potential for really getting the maximum amount of toothpaste out of the tube of toothpaste. So what would you say about that, Seb? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I mean, I actually think Levi should talk about this because this is a conversation that we have all the time. Levi does such a good job with the video, and he's a professional. And so, he always wants it to be the best possible. And so I think Levi would be a good person to talk about that. Go for it, Levi.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that I struggle with probably every single week is time versus what's possible versus is it good enough even after the amount of time that I was given. It's something that I struggle with every single week. And a lot of it just comes down to, as long as I'm putting in the full 100% effort that I have, whether it's I'm given 30 minutes or an hour, that kind of has to trump over the fact that if I was given 24 hours to work on something, that's going to be better than something that I work on for 30 minutes. But if I'm putting my full effort into that 30 minutes, then it being good enough isn't me saying that it's not great or it's not good, but it's definitely saying that it's good enough for the circumstances I was given, kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. I think that's so good. Like, because I mean, what Stephen said, good is the enemy of great. Totally agree with that. But I think we all start with good. And I think it's just pausing, and it's if you get to the point where you're like, once again, it's good enough, and you just stop there. Oh, it's good enough. We don't have to keep on getting better. Well, that's where there's a problem. But if today you did the best that you can, and the best you can is just good, that's okay, because tomorrow you can do the best you can again, and it might become better, and it will become great. And so I think it's so important to keep that in mind always, and to, what Levi said was exactly true. Every single one of us have an amount of ability, we have a budget, and we have a time constraint.
Sure.
We all have those three things to work with. So what are we going to do with those three things? If I wanted to spend all week working on something, I would love to do that. I'd love to spend all my time working on something. But at the end of the day, there's 10 other things that need to get done as well.
Sure.
And so can I put some dedicated time and the best that I can forward for that? well, then maybe that is good enough for today, and then I can work on that tomorrow to make it great.
Totally.
Mhm.
Vanessa here said, I love the idea of effort trumping perfect. And I think that is the heart, is to say it's good enough, is not us saying like, well, you guys need to put a bunch more money and a bunch more effort, and it's a bunch, but it really does come down to, and this sucks to say it like this, but it is what it is. It's like, are you being lazy, or are you putting in the effort to, make the bride look as good as she can on an online service? Or are you saying, well, let's wrap this thing up early, done for the week? Or is it good enough? Or are we always pushing the boundaries? And it's not to say, let's always keep trying, let's always keep pushing. Whereas the other side is, it's not good enough.
Yeah.
And the it's not good enough thing is just as debilitating as, on one side, it's, might be laziness, or so it's just like, well, it's is what it is. The it's not good enough is always like, you get paralyzed by this sense of, well, it's just not there yet, so I don't want to put it out. I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready, and all that kind of stuff. What do you want to try?
Yeah. One of the guys that works here at the church part-time, he does our online mixes. He's awesome, and he's great at what he does. But he's a perfectionist, so he always wants to do it perfect. And he's always at the point where he says it's not good enough. It's not good enough. He just wants more time. And I appreciate that about him, because sometimes I flip on the other side. I'm just like, well, we just got to get it done, because we just need to get it done. But I've seen so many times, he's also in a band, and he's been working on an album for the last 3 years, and he's gotten to a point where he doesn't even want to release the music because he's worried that it's not good enough. And I mean, let's be honest, what have any of us done 3 years ago that's good enough today? Like, there's nothing that I did 3 years ago that I'm still happy with really today. And so time can also be a killer in that sense, where it's like, if you leave it for so long, it's obsolete. You're just going to want to redo it. And so there's totally an aspect of, hey, I just need to get this out, and it's not exactly where I want it to be. But I think it's great still. And I think maybe it's better than I think it is when I get out of it. I think part of the problem is sometimes you're just like so stuck in a project, and you're so like, you're just wrapped up in it. We just got through Easter. All of us, I'm sure, spend a ton of time doing Easter stuff, and it can be debilitating when you're just like sitting in there and watching the stuff over and over again. This isn't even something we did on purpose, and it's something we should probably change. But we're always running so close to deadlines that we don't even have a chance to watch the final product of our services before we release it, which is ridiculous. But it's actually maybe a really good thing, because I think every single time I watch through it, I'm like, oh, that could have changed, and that could have changed, and that could have changed. It's like just this last Sunday, we got shut down again in Alberta. We're allowed having 15 people in our churches, which isn't really going to cut it. And so we said, okay, let's do a recording. Let's do a worship recording instead. And it's funny, because on a Sunday morning, if we just film the service, we get 5 songs. They sound great. We're happy with them. We release them. Yep. But when we have a recording, it's completely different. All the pressure's on. We want to do 4 takes, 3 hours to do 4 songs. It's like, and how much better is it? Now, once again, this is not an excuse to just say it's good enough. But there is that counterbalance where we need to make sure that it's good enough and it's not good enough. You're right in the middle, and that your priorities are able to be lined up with those things.
Yeah, I mean, Sunday comes every week.
Yeah, never stops.
Sunday comes. There's one Sunday every week, and I really think the idea of publish over perfection is something that creatives like to get paralyzed, and they want to tweak, and they want to tweak, and they want to tweak, and they want to rehash it over and over and over. And it's just like, hey, let's loose this thing out into the world, let it do its thing, let it minister to people, and we can always try again next week. And that next dichotomy we want to talk about is really focused on teams. Yep. And the dichotomy, it's similar to what we're already talking about, but the dichotomy is excellence versus development.
Mhm.
And now excellence, we all believe, we want to push the boundaries. We want to do things as well as we can. We want the mix to be good. We want the creative to be good. We want, our ethics to be high in things like accounting and admin, all these kind of things. And when we're bringing in volunteers, people that are coming up, that we want to create teams and equip the saints for the work of the ministry. How do we reconcile this high level of standard that we've set, this high level of excellence that we expect and we want, with developing some of these people that are coming along, the new guitar player, the new designer, the new videographer? How do we balance these two sides? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it also comes back to kind of what we were talking about earlier with being a church plant. Like, we started with nothing, and we didn't have people, we didn't have teams, we didn't have any of those things. And sure, we had a few key people that were good, really good at certain things. But I've seen time and time again that your ceiling is yourself. You're not going to go any further than yourself unless you're able to build teams. This week, Levi had to go into quarantine because he was sort of a close contact of someone. Yeah. They said he was. And so Levi wasn't able to be here this week, which sucked because Levi's great at what he does. But Levi's been working hard at building a team over the last number of months. And, in COVID, we're kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel, getting whoever we can. Whoever can hold a camera can hold a camera. And so when we were doing our worship recording on Sunday, there was I don't know, Levi, I don't know how many of those guys, it was their first or second time doing video stuff.
3 of them, or 2 of them. 2 of them for sure was.
So 2 out of 4, it was their first time doing video stuff. They had no idea what they're doing. And I mean, we haven't seen the results yet. They might be terrible, but the amazing thing is, I mean, Stephen, you were there on Sunday as well. And there were some young guys that were there, and they were just stoked about doing everything. And we kept on asking where things were, and they were so excited about it at the end that they put everything back exactly how it's supposed to be. Like, when has that ever happened? Never for me. And so, I think that excellence is so important. I think it's important to set a standard and say, hey, we're going for the best that we can. And we're trying to do the best that we can. But the most important thing is actually relationships. The most important thing is that we're building disciples and we're releasing them for the work of the ministry in their communities, in their churches, in their houses, wherever they are. And so for me, excellence is actually tied to development.
So good.
Excellence. I'm not doing a job as a pastor excellently if I'm not developing people who can do it. And yeah, sometimes when I'm developing them, sometimes when it's, when they're starting out, they might not actually be at the level that I want them to be, but they're never going to get there. None of us, everyone on this call, we didn't start where we are now. And 5 years from now, like I said, things don't age well. 5 years from now, we'll probably look back at what we're doing today and say, hey, I could do it better today. But it's because people were willing to give us an opportunity. People were willing to try something out and give us that opportunity. I actually have a funny story about that really quickly. We were looking for a Pro Presenter operator who doesn't look for Pro Presenter operators all the time.
Amen.
If anyone has a Pro Presenter operator in Edmonton who's looking for a church, send them my way. I can schedule them every Sunday. But we were looking for a Pro Presenter operator, and we had just launched a second location out in Stony Plain. And so I was really desperate, and there was a bunch of new people coming, and a lot of them weren't serving. And so I just went up to this guy that I sort of knew, and I was like, hey, I'd love for you to join the Pro Presenter team. Would you be interested in doing Pro Presenter? And he's just like, yeah, I guess so. And so I signed him up for Pro Presenter, and he starts doing Pro Presenter like every week for probably like 2 months. And 2 or 3 months into him doing Pro Presenter, I find out that he's fully dyslexic. Like, he can't really read. And I was just like, if I was just looking for the best, if I was looking for the star player,
for a finished product.
Yeah. If I was looking for a finished product, I don't think that I would have asked him to do it because he couldn't really read. But to tell you the truth, I don't even know how he did it, but he was able to do Pro Presenter, and he was able to hit it out of the park. And so, I think it's so important to give people opportunities and to know that, yes, there might be a cost associated with that, with giving someone an opportunity to the excellence, but they will surpass you at some point. Sure. And then your product's going to become more excellence, and that culture will continue building.
Yeah. Like my pastor in 2016, we had a full-time video multimedia, build out our whole studio. He ends up moving to Australia, and now he's an executive director for the Hillsong channel. Wow. So massive hole left at our church. And I at the time was in young adult ministry, pastor. Like this is what I'm doing. and then out of one, like a bunch of random events, it turns out my pastor, without any confidence in my skill, he says, "Hey, you're going to be the new media director for our church." we live stream to different locations. We have huge needs when it comes to creative. And I remember the first day I took the job, I walked down, our offices are in a different spot than the studio. I walked all the way down to the studio. I get to the door, and I'm like, man, this is bonkers that I'm doing this. And I try to go in, and the door's locked. So I got to walk all the way back to the offices. Like, hey guys, I know I feel awkward doing this job, and I feel like embarrassed that you guys all know that I'm doing this job and I don't know what I'm doing. Can somebody let me in, like, to the studio? Walk all the way back. I get in, I sit down on the computer, and there's a password on the computer.
Oh no.
So I got to go all the way back and be like, hey, what's the password?
Did you try Pro Presenter?
And and the first day that I took that job was the first day I opened a video editing software.
Wow.
And it was a pastor who was willing to see whatever ounce of potential he could see in me, and then giving me the freedom for things to be a bit messy. In order, the initial investment with any team that we're creating, the initial investment is painful. And it's going to be rocky, and it's going to be a mess. But what you're doing is you're creating a space where creativity can flourish, in a space where it's like, well, let's try to not make the mistakes catastrophic, but let's give some space where there can be mistakes made and different things like that. And eventually this person will find their legs and be able to do something really amazing. So
there's a great comment here, or a question. Do you guys find that most of your volunteers, you get most of your volunteers by personally asking them? And I would say, 100%. Church is about relationship. We know that. But sometimes I think we like to forget about that part when we're actually looking for new volunteers and looking who to make excellent, or who to build into, invest into. Like Levi's entire video team, we had no video team a year ago. Levi's entire video team are all people that he had relationships with. If he didn't have any relationships with people in the church, we would not have a video team today, because he was just able to ask them. And now everyone's like, oh, video is cool, so they all want to do it. But before that, same thing with worship. There was a guy who came, and someone told me, oh, he might be a drummer. And I just said, hey, I'd love for you to come audition for the worship team. And he came and auditioned. And was he the best drummer in the world? No. But he had a great attitude, and he was willing to work at it. And now he's one of our main drummers who we put on rotation. So yeah, for me, I don't know about you, Stephen, like when you were recruiting volunteers at the church, was it mostly found out of relationship, or?
Yeah, we at our church, we call it shoulder tapping.
Yeah.
You tap the shoulder, you say, hey, where are you serving?
Yeah.
And, a lot of the time it's, well, nowhere. I just show up, and really, local churches, we are to give ourselves to the local church. Like it's not just something that we attend. It's something that we actually need to give ourselves to, because that's actually what it means to be a part of a community. Everybody wants the buzzword of community, but they kind of shy away when they realize the price tag is accountability and commitment.
Right.
You got to commit to actually do something to build the church and do the work of the ministry, because that's actually what makes you stick. But I think when it comes to developing building teams, whether it's asking or not, you know, that whole, like, you know, preach the gospel at all times, and
Yeah.
if necessary, use words, and
Yeah.
as if like your neighbor's gonna like knock on your door and be like, so I realized that I saw you recycling, and I'm just wondering what religion you are,
Yeah,
and if I can
exactly.
become that religion.
Yeah.
That's not like, you need to at some point like proclaim the gospel,
Yeah,
like Jesus
totally.
died for our sin, rose again, made salvation. Like, you need to preach. It's the same with teams.
Yeah.
People aren't sitting there being like, man, I really wish I could just be a part of that team.
Yeah.
No, you need to pull the gold out of people.
Yeah.
You need to proclaim, like, you need to give opportunities and on ramps. And let me just say this while I'm here, and I'm gonna look at the camera right now. If you have a card on your desk right now that is filled out of people checking off teams that they want to be a part of, and you haven't called them, you can get off the Zoom right now and go call them. Don't wait another day. If there are people in your church right now saying, I want to serve, let them serve. Doesn't matter if they're dyslexic on Pro Presenter, if they're a deaf sound man, like, let people serve. And if it's not working out, what we do at our church is train. And if training doesn't work, we transfer. Transferring doesn't work, then you know, in the
different type of
corporate
release.
world, it would be terminate. So you train or you transfer, and this is how we do things.
Yeah, I think the other thing that I was thinking about when you were talking, I thought about two things. First thing is, usually if somebody comes to you that's already developed and already really good at something, that means that they're a free agent and they will remain a free agent.
Yeah, they're not.
Which means they're not. They might not be sticking around. Sure, those people help you out of you know, some stuff every once in a while, but free agents are free agents, and they're gonna remain free agents. They're gonna go to another church. They're gonna go help another church, and you know, they can do that. But we believe in being planted, and I think that people are gonna stick around a lot longer if you're invested in them. You're invested in their development, and you care about them. The second thing I thought about is that I actually have a Connect card, sort of, sitting on my desk right now. It's from,
you need to leave.
well, I should maybe leave. It's from an 8-year-old kid at our church. He wrote me a letter.
No way.
Put it in my mailbox because he really wants to do lights on Sunday. And so I'm going to start training him on lights on Sunday morning.
Praise the Lord.
And because if he starts at 8 years old and he even gets like 1% of what we're doing, just imagine the legend he's going to be at 15.
Absolutely.
It's just going to be crazy. And so, yeah, I think let's not, Pastor Brett always says this too. He says, don't say no for people.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so easy to be like, no, that guy doesn't want to do that. That person doesn't want to do that. Don't say no for people. Let people say no for themselves. And in Canada, we're a little too polite, I think. You know, in the States, people just call each other out left, right, and center. In Canada, we're like, I don't want to bother them. But bother them. Like, that's what the work of the ministry is. We're a family. Like, when my parents wanted me to do the dishes, they wouldn't just hope that I would go and do the dishes. They'd call me out of my bedroom to come down and to do the dishes. That's part of being the family. And so, you know, and I think like, as leaders, we're probably all doing that. And we might all be at the place where we already feel like burnt out of doing that, or we feel like, you know, we've done that a ton over the last season. I'm sure that your guys' tech teams and your volunteer teams have grown exponentially in the last year strictly out of need. Mm-hmm. And I think that tells us something that if those people were sitting there before, there's probably other people for other areas in your church that might be sitting in the seats that just need a little tap on the shoulder. But then the other thing is, if you don't have like a proper next steps, or like become a part of the church class, you know, yeah, we all have relationships, and there's so many people that we can get in relationship with. But, you know, if you have even a church of 200, you might not know every single person in that church, and they might not know you, and they might not want to come up to you, and it might be hard to build that relationship. So I personally think one of the most important things for us building teams has always been having a next steps. For us, it happened every single Sunday right after church. You go, you sit in the class, you find out who we are, you find out what your giftings are, you find out who the leaders are, and then we try and plug you in right away. And so I think it's just so important to have that extra step, because yes, we want to go and shoulder tap, and yes, we want to build relationships and talk to people, but there's always going to be those people that fall between the cracks. And so we want to have something as leaders to help them not fall between the cracks.
Absolutely. Adam asked here, can you speak to the idea of pastoring creative people? The balance of serving, working, creating versus receiving, etc. And I think that I mean, this could be a whole
Yeah.
other breakout session because, creative people are like, have you read the Psalms? Like one day David is like, life is amazing. I want to lay down by, the Lord is my shepherd. He makes me lay by the still waters. And then the next day he's like, blessed is the one who dashes babies against the rocks.
Yeah.
And like calling down imprecatory psalms judgment on his enemies. And like then the next psalm he's like, I wet my bed with tears.
Yeah.
And like, and I think that this is so indicative of who creatives are, is as much as people don't want to admit or they put up a facade or whatever, they are driven emotionally very strong. They're driven by their feelings, and that really is like the double-edged sword of creative people is like they feel things hard, and on one side it's amazing, and the other side, like when the highs are highs, the lows are lows, and different things like that. And so in order to pastor these people, it takes an incredible amount of patience, an incredible investment into people, and it also is the sense of, I might be reading between the lines here on this question, Adam, a little bit, but there are so many needs for creative people. And Seb, you might want to, or Levi, you might want to chat on this, but where you're always working every Sunday, you're always behind the computer every Sunday, you're always turning things on. They say FILO, first in, last out. The first one's there, last one's out. And church is no longer a community. Church is a task list to get through every single Sunday. And that wrecks Christians because they go from, I love my church, I love Jesus, I want to build the local church, I want to serve God, I want to do this. And then the slippery slope is resentment, where it's like, man, I'm tired of doing this. You only hear when things aren't good.
Yeah.
You only hear when things are broken. It's like if you did your job 100% perfect, no one notices. But the second that there's feedback, or the second that a slide is too late, or the second that the lights don't go on, that's the only time you get feedback. And so I think pastoring people in these roles, it is so vital that you check on them. Like, just check on them and say like, hey, I'm not concerned, I'm not worried, but I want to know, how are you? How's your soul? How are you feeling? Can I buy you a coffee? Can I hang out with you? Do you want to go for a drive? Or do you want to like, whatever, check on them, but then also, have realistic expectations. Write out a job description if you have to, of like, or, hey, do you need another half-time, part-time employee? Or can I contract out some of your work if you need? Like, where are you at? What do you think about that? So.
Yeah, this is, I mean, it's a loaded question, Adam. Thanks a lot for that one. It's so good to think about these things because, I mean, the first thing is, if you're thinking about this, you're probably a little bit ahead of the curve, because it's easy to forget about the people who are doing your tasks or who are creating and are doing things that they love or they loved it at some point. I think what Steven said was bang on. I mean, once again, it comes back to relationship. Like, do we have relationships with our teams? Do we have relationships with people who are serving at our church, or are they simply coming to help accomplish our creative goals? And I know it's, we all have at our churches people who are like the most faithful people. They're coming all the time, and they're willing to serve every single Sunday. And I think as leaders, we really need to be on top of sometimes forcing even a little bit of like separation between serving and being at church. I mean, I've been at church every single day for the past 7 years ish. And I've probably heard less sermons in the last 7 years than I did before I was on staff at a church.
Right.
Because like Steven said, when you're doing tech stuff, you're just going all over the place. You're just trying to fix the next problem and trying to do those things. And so our teams are in the same position. They might be at church all the time, but not have experienced God for a very long time. And so I think not only do we need to have relationships with people, but I think it's really important that we foster environments of prayer, foster environments where our teams understand that when we come together and when we serve, we are worship. For me as worship pastor, we're worshiping together. Like if I go on stage and I don't meet with God, then I have completely wasted my Sunday because I need that time. But then I also think, as creatives, it's easy to, and maybe it's not just creatives, I think it's just people in general. We go to church and we expect that church will be our relationship with God.
Right.
But as we all know, if we don't have that devotional time, if we don't spend time in the Word by ourselves, then we're going to have a problem. And I think especially creatives actually burn out a lot quicker because they, if they're not going to the source of creativity, if they're not going to the source of their talent and who gives them the gifts, then they're going to start relying on themselves a lot, and they're going to leave one way or another. They might leave because there's a better opportunity to make a lot of money.
Right.
And, if I'm just operating a camera at church and I'm not listening to the Word and I'm not praying as a team before and we're not encouraging each other before, well, why wouldn't I just go operate a camera for a hockey game?
Right.
It's the same thing, but I can make way more money.
Sure.
And so I think, pastoring creatives, there's a special, it's time consuming. Pastoring anyone's time consuming, but pastoring people who are emotional is the most time consuming thing you can do. But I also think that it has the most rewards, because those same people that you walk through life with they'll bend over backwards for you too. And likely if you're a creative pastor, you're probably emotional too. So you probably need those relationships as well. At least I am.
Yeah. We're going to open it up for questions here because we want to, we've been answering questions anyways, but if you have any, make sure you put them in now, and we'll try to address them. But one of the last dichotomies that we did want to mention, which goes hand in hand, is this idea of vision versus viability. And I think those of us who find ourselves in creative roles, or maybe you are in a senior leadership role, there's two sides of this thing where it's like the senior leader will come with the vision to, we're going to do a parking lot, we're going to do a drive-in, or we're going to go online. I know we haven't been online, but we're going to go online, or, hey, we're going to do X, Y, Z. And it's whatever, the pastor has a vision to do.
Whatever Hillsong did, we need to do that.
Exactly.
If Bethel did it, can we accomplish that?
Yeah. And the question mark is when do those things are they sustainable? Are they viable? And how do we as creatives set out to accomplish the vision that the senior leadership brings to us? Because yes, if he's going to spend the time, employing us, and, if you're creative, you're making $50,000 a year and you're there for 5 years, your church just invested in you $250,000 in order to get you to the place where you are this, creative juggernaut or whatever. And so it is our responsibility to respond to our pastor's vision. God has entrusted that senior leader with that position in order to accomplish the redemptive gifts of that house. And so how do we as creatives, make this sustainable, viable? Maybe it isn't viable. So how do we have that conversation with our senior leadership? Do you want to, Levi, you want to chime in, or you want Seb to chime in?
Levi to chime in.
I mean, I think you just have to be honest and sit down with your leadership, or if you are the leadership, is give that opportunity to those creatives to actually talk to you about in what their mind looks accomplishable, and what they actually think that is manageable even to the day-to-day. Like if it's for one Sunday and you have your 40 hours a week employee working on it for 60 hours a week, that may not be the best use of their time if they're doing 8 other things. So I think it just comes down to having that conversation and actually seeing what's manageable and what isn't going to cause resentment or someone just to be upset every time they leave the doors of the church. I think that's kind of very important, or at least that's something that I view important for this.
Yeah, I think exactly what Levi just said. Like, I think communication, for any of us who are married, we know that communication is key. Communication's everything. Me and my wife are looking for a van, and we got into a big fight the other day because when we were setting the filters on Kijiji, I had it at 17,000, but I wasn't going to spend $17,000 on a minivan. But she thought that's what we were going to spend on the minivan because that was the top end. And I said, well, no, I'm going to negotiate. I'm not even willing to spend within a few $1,000s of that. And so I think it's really important if you're a lead pastor and if your creative team, if I don't know where your relationship is with your creative team, I think it's really important that you sit down maybe on a weekly or a monthly basis and just check in to make sure that people understand what your goals are and you can understand what's needed. Like, I can't tell you how many times as my lead pastor walks in the room, so I can't even answer this question properly. No. I can't tell you how many times that I've been asked to do something and it's been nearly impossible to accomplish it. But through a conversation, we find out, oh, maybe the goal wasn't that we, looked exactly like the Hillsong conference in 2015. Maybe the goal was that we had this video element from that conference or something. What is a win for us? What's a win for both of us together? And I think that's so important that lead pastors go and talk to your creative teams and make sure that they're clear as to what your actual hopes are and be realistic about it. And secondly, I think if you're a lead pastor, make sure you ask them what's realistic. And I think it's okay to push. My lead pastor always pushes me, always asks for more than I think that I can give. But we always end up getting there. And so I think asking for a lot is okay. But I also think there needs to be a sense of understanding where they're coming from and understanding where the tech team is coming from or the creatives are coming from. And then the other thing is, as a creative, if your pastor doesn't come to you and ask those questions, make sure that you go to them because they could very, very easily be completely unaware. They might be like, oh, let's do a drive-in this Sunday. It will be great. And you're like, immediately in your brain, you're like, okay, that's going to require a stage and an FM transmitter. Are we going to need speakers? We're going to need in-ear monitors for the band. How are we doing a screen? What kind of a screen does that look like? We can't do a projector outside. There's this list that immediately populates in your mind as a creative, or maybe there's a social media post that someone asked for. Oh, well, yeah, I'd love to do that social media post, but you just asked for a picture of this thing that only happens in the summer and it's the middle of winter right now. So what is the cost behind the things that are being asked? And I think just having clear communication between you and your lead pastor or whoever's above you is so important. And I don't think that there's ever a case where you are over communicating, really. Like, sure. Let's be honest, our lead pastors have a lot of stuff to do. And so if you even get 10 minutes to be able to talk to them, you're not going to be over communicating. But at the end of the day, remember, our lead pastors have vision and they have a direction that they want to go, and we serve their vision, and we die to our vision because their vision is actually the most important. And we've put ourselves in a place of submission where we're saying, hey, you know what? That's okay. Right now, I'm not necessarily doing what I want to do. I'm doing what you want to do. And that's okay. And I think once we learn to submit and once we learn to kind of go in that direction, we're actually going to accomplish way more. And your relationship with your pastors are also going to get way better, and they're going to start understanding. Like, honestly, a huge part of this is that people just aren't aware of how much stuff is required for some of the things that they ask.
It's true. And so I think, yeah, as the creatives in your church and maybe you're the lead of that department or vice versa, maybe you're senior leadership and you have these conversations with your creative head, I think both sides, it is important to educate as best as possible. Maybe you only have 10 minutes to chat about it, but the conversation might need to be 8 minutes logistics and 2 minutes like, hey, just so you know, here's what you're asking of me.
Yeah.
This is what it requires. Do you want me to spend my time doing this? And if they say yes, you go, all right, this is my role. I am the employee here. You are, my pastor. I'm going to submit to your vision, and we're going to make this incredible.
Yeah.
And I think when you take that stance and posture, it actually gives you some equity for when you do need to pump the brakes.
Yeah.
Your pastor knows, hey, if this was possible, this guy would be doing it.
Yeah.
But if it's not, then I need to have a realistic
and
expectation.
I think too, when you're going to talk to them, like if they ask you for something, I think it's really actually good to bring a few different options to them. So it's not just like, it's really easy to bring the $100,000 option to your pastor, but it's a lot more work to bring the like $2,000 or $200 option to them. And I mean, once again, creativity is not just this, and this. Creativity is finding a solution to your problem. We're right back at the start where we began.
Sure.
But are we providing our lead pastors with options to accomplish what they're hoping to accomplish? And once again, our lead pastors are not out there to get us. They're not out there to make our lives a living hell or to make us work like crazy. They're really working hard to try and pastor the church and try and reach the community. And there's so many things that we don't know that they're going through or that's going on in the background that, it's easy for us to jump to conclusions about why they might be doing something. I think it's a lot harder just to say, I want to try and make this work. And so I'm going to go on Alibaba and order some really sketchy moving headlights and have fun with that. And I think, you can actually have so much fun coming up with ridiculous ways to accomplish things that you never thought you'd be able to.
So good, man. So good. Hey guys, the hour flew by.
Wow.
We are at 2:59. General session starting up here again in about a minute. But before we let you go, here's what I'm offering. I started Imago Media. It is a creative agency serving local churches, really specifically across Canada right now. And what I'm offering to anyone who's a part of the Ministers Network Canada National Conference today is a free 30-minute consulting call with you or with your team to, assess your strengths, assess your opportunities for growth. If you do want to sign up for that, you can go to Imago, which is the Latin word for image, IMAGO. Imago.
Sound like Panago?
It's like Panago. Imago.media/MNC for Ministers Network Canada. I would love to just get to know you, hear about your church, hear what God is doing, see if maybe there's an opportunity to work together to do some creative services, design, do an audit maybe on your website, your communications, anything when it comes to the creative side and the communication side of your church. Would love to offer that to you. Imago.media/MNC. Would love to meet you and chat. Levi, Seb, guys, thanks for hanging out.
Well, thanks for having us, Stephen. And I also just want to say to everyone, like, if you guys, church should not be done alone. As pastors, we can be really isolated, especially in this time. And so I just encourage you guys, if you don't have someone who you can talk to or to help you out with things, or if there's a creative problem that you're coming up against that you can't figure out, please reach out to different people, maybe on this call. I'm always available. Feel free to email me, seb@saintschurch.ca, seb@saintschurch.ca. And just make sure that we're doing life together. It's not about, this isn't a competition. We're all part of the church together. We're all part of growing together. And so, if you're needing, help with anything, reach out to Stephen. He is amazing. And let me tell you, he does amazing work for us as well. And so,
thank you.
So thankful to be able to be on this call with everyone today. And
Let's end in prayer.
yeah, let's
Levi,
do
you
it.
want to pray?
Yeah, let's
Levi,
do
you
it.
want to pray?
Oh, he always ends in prayer.
Sure. Dear Lord, thank you for today. Thank you for this opportunity for us to come together and chat about things that maybe don't get talked about too often in our church. I just pray that any of the people that were in this call today, that they can just leave with a new heart, maybe a change of heart, a new direction that they want to go with their church. I just pray for change, and I pray for opportunity for those that were in this chat, that they will just feel a new kind of enjoyment in this kind of conversation and motivation to get better and take some of the things away from today that they learned. And I just pray for a good rest of our conference together, and I pray that the rest of the day goes smoothly and awesome. So, amen.
Amen.
Hey, well, bless you guys. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll look forward to the rest of the general sessions.
Awesome. See you guys later.